I disguised myself as a poor person and went to a luxury car dealership to see how the employees would treat me. I've always believed that true wealth isn't measured by the money in your bank account, but by the integrity with which you live your life. My name is Alexander Vance, and though the world knows me as a discreet millionaire, today I'm embarking on a mission that will test not only my own beliefs, but those of an entire industry. It all started during a dinner with my friend Jack Morrison, owner of Valor Industries. Over glasses of red wine and business talk, Jack shared a concern that had been eating away at him. "Alexander," he said with a frustrated sigh, "I'm fed up with how dealerships treat our customers. They judge them by their appearance, as if a person's worth is measured by the brand of their clothes or the shine of their shoes." His words resonated with me. Despite my fortune, I've always preferred simplicity. How many times had I been judged for my modest appearance? It was then that a bold idea crossed my mind. "Jack," I said, leaning forward with a conspiratorial smile, "what if we put one of those dealerships to the test? I'm thinking of Elite Motors in Chicago. I've heard they're the best, but are they really?" Jack's eyes lit up with interest. "What do you have in mind, old friend?" "I'll disguise myself as an ordinary man. No expensive suits or luxury watches. I'll be just another face in the crowd. I'll visit the dealership and we'll see how they treat me." Jack nodded slowly, a smile forming on his lips. "I like it, but let's make it more interesting. If we discover they're failing, we'll teach them a lesson they won't forget." And so our plan was born. In the days that followed, I prepared meticulously. I grew an unkempt beard, bought second-hand clothes, and practiced in front of the mirror to adopt a less confident posture. The day arrived, and as I looked at myself in the mirror of my mansion, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. "It's time for the truth," I muttered to myself as I left through the back door, avoiding my staff. I got into an old sedan I had bought specifically for this occasion and headed towards Elite Motors. My heart was pounding as I parked in front of the luxurious dealership. The gleaming cars in the showroom seemed to mock my modest appearance. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was more than just a game. It was a test of character, not only for Elite Motors, but for myself as well. With hesitant steps, I crossed the glass doors. The air conditioning hit me like a blast of reality. Here I was, Alexander Vance, one of the richest men in the country, pretending to be someone I wasn't. But wasn't this the essence of who I really am? A man who values substance over appearance. As I made my way through the showroom, I noticed the sidelong glances from the salesmen. Derek and Tom, according to their name tags, seemed to be evaluating me, and from their expressions, it was clear they didn't like what they saw. I approached a beautiful red sports car, admiring its elegant lines. "Excuse me," I called out to Derek, who was nearby but deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. "Could you give me more information about this model?" Derek looked me up and down, not bothering to hide his disdain. "This is a high-end vehicle, sir. Perhaps you'd be interested in something more accessible." I felt a pang of indignation, but maintained my role. "I'm just asking, what are its features?" "Look," Tom interrupted, joining the conversation with a condescending tone. "So this car isn't for everyone. It requires a certain level. Perhaps we should show you our used options." I was about to respond when a soft, professional voice intervened. "Excuse me, can I help with anything?" I turned to see a young woman with a name tag that read Lily Mendez, receptionist. Unlike her colleagues, her smile was genuine and her gaze respectful. "Yes, please," I replied, grateful for her intervention. "I'd like to know more about this model." Lily began explaining the car's features with enthusiasm and knowledge, without a hint of prejudice in her voice. As she spoke, I noticed Derek and Tom walking away, muttering to each other and casting disparaging glances in my direction. After Lily's explanation, I thanked her for her time and asked if I could speak with the manager. "I'm sorry, sir," she replied courteously, "but the manager isn't available at the moment. Is there anything I can help you with?" I shook my head, thanking her once again for her attention. As I headed towards the exit, my mind was already working on the next step of our plan. Derek and Tom's attitude had confirmed Jack's fears, but Lily, She was a light in the darkness. I left Elite Motors with a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was disappointed by the treatment I'd received, but on the other, I felt inspired by Lily's integrity. One thing was clear: this was just the beginning. As I drove back home, I couldn't stop thinking about how a simple change in my appearance had revealed so much about human nature. I wondered what else I would discover in the coming days, and how this experience could change not only Elite Motors, but perhaps the entire industry. What started as a simple test was turning into something much bigger, and I, Alexander Vance, was ready to see where this path would lead us. The days following my undercover visit to Elite Motors were a whirlwind of emotions and planning. Jack and I met privately to discuss the next steps. The indignation on his face was palpable when I told him about the treatment I received from Derek and Tom. "It's exactly what I feared," Jack growled, slamming his fist on the table. "They're judging books by their covers, Alexander. This can't continue." I nodded, sharing his frustration. "But not all is lost," I reminded him. Lily, the receptionist, showed impeccable integrity. She could be the key to changing Elite Motors' culture. Jack looked at me curiously. "What do you have in mind?" "I'm going back," I declared with determination, "but this time I'll go as myself. The contrast will be revealing." And so, a week after my first visit, I found myself in front of the mirror again. But this time it was the Alexander Vance that the world knew who was staring back at me. Tailored suit, luxury watch, Italian shoes, every detail screamed success and money. As I entered Elite Motors, the atmosphere changed instantly. Looks of admiration and respect followed me as I walked through the showroom. Derek and Tom, who had treated me with disdain before, now practically ran towards me with wide and fake smiles. "Welcome, sir," Derek said, extending his hand. "How can we help you today?" Tom wasn't far behind. "We have some exclusive models that I'm sure you'll be interested in. Would you like to see them?" The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. These were the same men who, a week ago, had treated me as if I were invisible. I maintained my composure, determined to see how far their false courtesy would go. "I'm interested in the red sports car you have on display," I said, pointing to the same car I had admired on my previous visit. "Excellent choice, how, sir?" Tom exclaimed. "That model is perfect for a man of your caliber." As Derek and Tom showered me with compliments and technical details, I looked around for Lily. I found her at her reception post, busy with some papers. When our eyes met, she greeted me with the same kind and professional smile she had offered me the week before. Excusing myself from the salesman, I approached her. "Good morning," I greeted. "Good morning, sir," Lily responded, her voice as warm as I remembered. "How can I help you?" "I just wanted to personally thank you for your excellent attention last week," I said, carefully observing her reaction. Lily blinked, confused for a moment, before recognition lit up her face. "Oh, it was you," she said softly, a mixture of surprise and respect in her tone. "I'm glad I could help you." "Sir?" Her reaction confirmed what I already suspected. Lily was a genuine person, whose treatment didn't depend on the appearance or status of the customers. As I returned to Derek and Tom, who were anxiously waiting for me, I couldn't help but feel a mix of disgust at their behavior and admiration for Lily's integrity. The discrepancy between the two visits was overwhelming, and I knew we had to act. I feigned interest in several models, letting Derek and Tom deploy their full arsenal of sales techniques. Each fake smile, each exaggerated compliment only served to reinforce my determination to change things. At the end of my visit, I asked to speak with the manager. This time, I was immediately received in his office. The manager, a middle-aged man named Robert, greeted me with the same servile attitude as his salesman. "Mr. Vance, it's an honor to have you in our dealership," he said, offering me a seat and coffee. "How can we serve you today?" I sat down, carefully evaluating my next words. "Mr. Robert, I'm here for more than just buying a car. I'm here to talk about the future of Elite Motors and its relationship with Valor Industries." Robert's face paled slightly. "I don't understand, Mr. Vance. Is there a problem?" "The problem," I said slowly, "is the culture of your dealership. I've witnessed firsthand how you treat your customers differently, based solely on their appearance. This is not acceptable. Robert began to stammer excuses, but I interrupted him with a gesture of my hand. I'm not finished. I've seen the worst of your team, but also the best. You have employees like Lily, whose integrity is an example to follow. It's time for a change, Robert. And you have two choices: adapt or lose the contract with Valor Industries. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the fear and confusion in Robert's eyes as he processed my words. Finally, he spoke with a trembling voice. Of course, Mr. Vance. We'll make the necessary changes. What do you suggest? For starters, I said, standing up, Lily will be promoted. She'll be in charge of training and improving customer service. And as for Derek and Tom, well, it's up to you to decide if they can adapt to the new culture we're going to create here. I left Robert's office feeling both exhausted and energized. I knew that what I had just done would have repercussions beyond Elite Motors. We were about to shake the foundations of an entire industry. As I headed to my car, I saw Lily at her desk. Our eyes met once again, and at that moment, I was certain that she would be the key to the change we were seeking. What Lily didn't know was that her life was about to take a dramatic turn, and I would be the catalyst for that change. I started my car, leaving Elite Motors behind, but knowing I would soon return. The real test was just beginning, and I was ready to see how this story would unfold. Because in the world of business, as in life, sometimes it takes a shake-up to reveal the true nature of people and companies. The days following my visit to Elite Motors were a whirlwind of activity. Jack and I met several times to discuss the next steps and how we would implement the changes we had demanded. Meanwhile, at the dealership, a silent revolution was brewing. I received a call from Robert, the manager of Elite Motors, just 2 days after my visit. His voice trembled slightly as he informed me that he had followed my instructions to the letter. Mr. Vance, he said, I've promoted Lily Mendez to a leadership position in customer service, as you suggested. But there's some resistance among some staff members. I wasn't surprised. Change always meets resistance, especially when it threatens the status quo. Keep me informed, Robert, I said. And make sure Lily has all the support she needs. I decided it was time to see for myself how things were developing. This time, there would be no disguises or deceptions. I would go as myself, Alexander Vance, the millionaire who now had a personal interest in Elite Motors' success. As I entered the dealership, the atmosphere was noticeably different. There was a palpable tension in the air. I saw Lily in her new office, surrounded by papers and with a determined expression on her face. Derek and Tom were in a corner, whispering to each other and casting furtive glances towards Lily. I approached Lily first. When she saw me, she quickly stood up, a mixture of surprise and nervousness on her face. Mr. Vance, she greeted me, we weren't expecting your visit. The best inspections are surprise ones, Lily, I said with a smile. How's everything going? Lily took a deep breath before responding. It's challenging, she admitted. I'm grateful for the opportunity, but some team members aren't happy with the changes. I nodded understandingly. Change is never easy, Lily, but I trust you're up to the challenge. What have you implemented so far? Lily began to enthusiastically explain her plans to me. She had designed a new customer service training program, established metrics to evaluate customer treatment, and even proposed an anonymous feedback system for customers. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel impressed. Lily not only had integrity, but also vision and determination. It was clear that she had taken her new responsibility seriously. Excellent work, Lily, I said when she finished. Keep it up. You have my full support. As I walked away, I noticed Derek approaching me. His attitude was completely different from my last visit. There was no longer that false courtesy, but an expression of genuine concern. Mr. Vance, he said quietly, can I speak with you privately? Intrigued, I nodded and followed him to a quiet corner of the dealership. Sir, Derek began, clearly nervous, I know my behavior in the past hasn't been the best, but I want you to know that I'm committed to changing Lily's new policies. They make sense. I'm trying to adapt, really. His confession took me by surprise. I hadn't expected to see such a quick change, especially in someone who had shown so much prejudice before. "I appreciate your honesty, Derek," I said. "The first step to change is recognizing that it's necessary. Keep working on it." Derek nodded gratefully and walked away. As I watched him return to his post, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Maybe our experiment was having a deeper impact than we had expected. However, my optimism was quickly challenged when I noticed Tom in a corner, talking heatedly on the phone. Although I couldn't hear his conversation, his body language screamed trouble. I decided to approach stealthily, pretending to examine a nearby car. Fragments of Tom's conversation reached my ears. "They can't do this. That girl knows nothing. We have to do something." My heart sank. It was clear that not everyone was willing to accept the changes as easily as Derek. Tom represented a threat to everything we were trying to achieve. As I left Elite Motors that day, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. On one hand, I was excited about Lily's progress and Derek's apparent transformation. On the other, Tom's words deeply worried me. I knew we had to be prepared for anything. The fight to change Elite Motors was just beginning, and I had the feeling that things would get much more complicated before they got better. That night, as I looked out the window of my study, I reflected on the day's events. I had set something in motion bigger than I had anticipated. It was no longer just about changing a dealership. We were challenging an entire system of ingrained beliefs and behaviors. Lily, with her integrity and vision, had become the catalyst for this change, was determined to see this battle through to the end, no matter the cost. The days turned into weeks, and Elite Motors transformed into a silent battlefield. Each visit of mine revealed new layers of complexity in the dynamics that were developing. Lily, true to her nature, worked tirelessly to implement the changes she had proposed. Her dedication was admirable, but I could see the fatigue in her eyes. She carried the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, and I wondered if I hadn't pushed her too quickly into a position for which she might not have been fully prepared. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in my office, I received an unexpected call. It was Derek. "Mr. Vance." His voice sounded urgent and a bit scared. "I need to talk to you. It's about Tom." We agreed to meet at a discreet cafe, away from Elite Motors. When I arrived, Derek was already there, nervous and constantly looking over his shoulder. "What's going on, Derek?" I asked, sitting across from him. Derek took a deep breath before speaking. "Tom is planning something, sir. Something big and bad. He wants to sabotage everything Lily has been doing." My heart raced. Although I had suspected Tom would be a problem, I hadn't expected an open conspiracy. "Tell me everything," I asked Derek, and so he did. He told me about secret meetings, plans to leak false information to the competition, attempts to undermine Lily's authority in front of customers. Tom was determined to prove that Lily's new approach was a failure, even if it meant damaging Elite Motors itself in the process. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Derek when he finished. Derek lowered his gaze, ashamed. "Because I've changed, Mr. Vance. Or at least, I'm trying to. Seeing Lily work so hard, seeing how she treats everyone equally, it made me realize how wrong I was before. I can't be part of what Tom is planning." His confession moved me. It was living proof that change was possible, that people could grow and evolve if given the chance. "Thank you for your honesty, Derek," I said. "I need you to keep watching Tom. Keep your eyes open and keep me informed." Derek nodded, visibly relieved to have shared his burden. That night, as I drove back home, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. We needed to act, but carefully. One wrong move could give Tom the ammunition he needed to discredit all our efforts. I decided it was time to have a frank conversation with Lily. She deserved to know what she was up against. The next day, I invited her to lunch. I chose a quiet restaurant where we could talk without interruption. When Lily arrived, I could see the surprise on her face at seeing me in a more informal setting. "Mr. Vance," she greeted me, sitting down. "Is everything all right?" "Lily," I began, deciding to get straight to the point. "I need you to know something. There are forces within Elite Motors working against you." I told her everything Derek had revealed to me, watching as her expression changed from surprise to concern, and then to determination. "I can't say I'm completely surprised," she finally said. I felt the resistance, especially from Tom. But I didn't imagine he would go this far. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Lily looked me straight in the eyes, and I saw in her a strength I hadn't noticed before. "I want to fight, Mr. Vance. I've worked too hard to let Tom or anyone else ruin it all, but I need your help." Her determination filled me with pride. "You have my full support, Lily, but we need to be smart about this. Tom is dangerous precisely because he has nothing to lose." We spent the next hour devising a plan. We decided that Lily would continue with her initiatives, but we would be prepared for any move from Tom. Derek would be our eyes and ears inside the dealership. As we said goodbye, I noticed something different about Lily. She was no longer just the honest receptionist I had met weeks ago. She had become a leader, forged in the fire of adversity. And at the center of it all was Lily, a woman who had proven to have more strength and determination than anyone could have imagined. That night, as I looked out the window of my study, I realized that my feelings towards Lily were changing. It was no longer just professional admiration. There was something more, something I didn't dare name yet. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I couldn't afford distractions now. We had a battle to win, and I needed to keep a cool head. But as I prepared for bed, I couldn't help but think of Lily, of her smile, of her determination. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself eager to see what tomorrow would bring. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster of events. Lily, armed with the knowledge of Tom's conspiracy, worked with renewed determination. Each day brought new challenges, but also small victories that gave us hope. One morning, while reviewing Elite Motors reports in my office, I received an urgent call from Derek. "Mr. Vance," his voice sounded agitated. "Tom has made his move. He's leaked false information to the local press about alleged unethical practices at Elite Motors." My heart sank. We knew Tom was planning something, but we didn't expect him to go this far. "What kind of information, Derek?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "He's alleging that the dealership has been tampering with odometers on used cars and hiding defects in new vehicles," Derek replied. "It's all lies, of course, but journalists are already asking questions." I cursed under my breath. Tom had chosen his attack well. Even if we managed to debunk the accusations, the damage to Elite Motors' reputation could be irreparable. "Thanks for letting me know, Derek," I said. "Keep your eyes open and don't let Tom suspect that we know." I ended the call and stood staring out the window, feeling the weight of the situation on my shoulders. We needed to act quickly, but carefully. One wrong step could make things worse. I decided it was time for an emergency meeting. I called Jack, Lily, and Robert, the manager of Elite Motors. We met in my office that same afternoon. Lily was the first to arrive. When she entered, I could see the concern in her eyes. "Mr. Vance," Lily said, sitting in front of me, "I assume you're already aware of the situation." I nodded gravely. "Derek informed me this morning. It's worse than we expected." Lily clenched her fists on her lap. "I can't believe Tom would go this far. How could he do this to the company that has given him so much?" Before I could respond, Jack and Robert entered the office. The tension in the air was palpable. "Well, we're all here," I said, standing up. "Let's get to the point. Tom has leaked false information to the press, accusing Elite Motors of unethical practices. We need an immediate action plan." Robert visibly paled. "This could ruin us," he muttered. "Customers will flee en masse if these accusations spread." "Not if we act quickly and intelligently," Jack interjected. "We need to counterattack with the truth." Lily, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "I have an idea," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "What if we use this as an opportunity to demonstrate our integrity?" We all looked at her, intrigued. Lily continued, "I propose we invite the journalists to the dealership. We'll give them full access, show them our records, our processes. We'll be completely transparent." I was impressed. It was a risky move, but brilliant. "That could work," I said slowly. "If we have nothing to hide, we have nothing to fear." Jack nodded approvingly. "I like it. It's bold. but it could be just what we need to turn the situation around. Robert seemed less convinced. It's risky, he said. What if they find something they shouldn't? If there's anything we shouldn't be doing, Robert, then it's better we discover it first, I replied firmly. This is our opportunity to prove that Elite Motors is exactly what we say it is, an ethical and transparent company. We spent the next few hours refining the plan. Lily would coordinate the journalists' visit, while Robert would prepare the staff. Jack and I would handle any repercussions with our business partners. When everyone left, I was left alone with Lily in the office. She looked tired, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes that I couldn't help but admire. Lily, I said softly, I want you to know that I'm impressed by how you've handled all of this. Your idea today, it was brilliant. She looked at me, a small smile forming on her lips. Thank you, Mr. Vance, but I couldn't have done it without your support. There was a moment of silence between us, charged with something I didn't dare name. Finally, Lily spoke again. There's something I've been wanting to ask you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Why me? Of all the people at Elite Motors, why did you choose me to lead this change? The question took me by surprise, but I knew the answer was clear in my mind and heart. Because I saw in you something that's rare in this world, Lily, I replied. Integrity, compassion, the willingness to do the right thing, even when no one is looking. Those are the qualities we needed to change Elite Motors, and you have them in abundance. I saw a glimmer in her eyes, and for a moment I feared I had said too much. But then Lily smiled, a genuine smile that lit up the whole room. Thank you, she said simply. I won't let you down. When Lily left, I stood looking out the window, reflecting on the day's events. The storm Tom had unleashed was fierce, but now we had a plan to face it. And at the center of that plan was Lily, a woman who continued to surprise me with her strength and integrity. As the sun set over the city, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The coming days would be crucial, not just for Elite Motors, but for all of us. The battle we had initiated was reaching its critical point, and only time would tell if our efforts would be enough. But one thing was certain. No matter the outcome, nothing would ever be the same again. And as I thought of Lily, of her determination and her smile, I realized that maybe, just maybe, that change wasn't so bad after all. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Lily worked tirelessly to prepare for the journalists' visit, ensuring every detail was in place. Derek, for his part, kept a watchful eye on Tom, informing me of every suspicious move. The day of the journalists' visit dawned cloudy, as if the sky itself reflected the tension we felt. I arrived early at Elite Motors, determined to be present throughout the process. Lily greeted me at the entrance, her face a mixture of nervousness and determination. Everything's ready, Mr. Vance, she told me. The journalists will arrive in an hour. I nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. You've done well, Lily. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I saw a blush rise to her cheeks. But before she could respond, Robert approached us hurriedly. Mr. Vanson, we have a problem, he said in a low voice. Tom hasn't shown up for work today. I felt a chill run down my spine. Tom's absence couldn't be a coincidence. What was he planning? We didn't have much time to speculate. The journalists began to arrive, their eyes scrutinizing every corner of the dealership with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Lily took control of the situation with a grace that left me impressed. She guided the journalists through the dealership, explaining each process in detail and answering their questions with honesty and transparency. As I watched, I couldn't help but feel a wave of pride. Lily had grown so much in these weeks, going from being a simple receptionist to a capable and confident leader. The visit seemed to be going well, until one of the journalists asked the question we all feared. What do you have to say about the accusations of odometer tampering and concealment of defects? He asked, his eyes fixed on Lily. There was a moment of palpable tension. I saw Robert pale, but Lily maintained her composure. Those accusations are completely false, she said firmly. In fact, I invite you to examine our records. Had I underestimated Tom? Did he really have evidence of some irregularity? But before Tom could say another word, Derek stepped forward. "No, Tom," he said in a firm voice. "That's enough." We all fell silent, surprised by Derek's intervention. He continued, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with each word. "Gentlemen of the press, I want to confess something to you. I was part of a plan to discredit this company." "A plan orchestrated by Tom?" Tom's eyes widened, the color draining from his face. "What are you doing?" he hissed. Derek ignored him, continuing his confession. "We were jealous of the changes Lily was implementing. We were afraid of losing our status, our commissions. So we decided to sabotage her efforts. But I realized I was wrong. What Lily has accomplished here, it's something good. Something necessary." The journalists were frantic, taking notes and asking questions. Tom, seeing his plan crumbling, tried to flee but was stopped by security personnel. Amidst the chaos, I searched for Lily with my eyes. Our gazes met, and I saw in her a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something else. Something that made my heart race. The following hours were a whirlwind of statements, interviews, and explanations. But by the end of the day, when the last journalist left, it was clear that we had won. The truth had come to light, and Elite Motors had emerged stronger than ever. That night, as we closed the dealership, I found myself alone with Lily in her office. She was exhausted, but radiant. "We did it," she said softly, a smile lighting up her face. "You did it," I corrected. "Your integrity, your vision, that's what saved Elite Motors today." There was a moment of silence between us, charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, Lily spoke. "Mr. Vance." "Alexander," she said, using my first name for the first time. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. "Yes, Lily," she took a deep breath. "These past few months have been the most challenging of my life, but they've also been the most rewarding, and a large part of that is thanks to you, your faith in me, your support. It means more than I can express." I felt a lump in my throat. "Lily, But before I could continue, we were interrupted by Robert, who rushed into the office. "Mr. Vance, Lily, you have to see this," he said, turning on the TV on the wall. On the screen, we saw the headlines of the evening news. "Elite Motors emerges triumphant. Integrity overcomes conspiracy." As we watched the report on which praised Elite Motors, transparency, and Lily's bravery, I felt a mix of emotions: relief at having overcome the crisis, pride in what we had accomplished, and a growing certainty that my feelings for Lily went beyond professional admiration. But as we celebrated our victory, I couldn't help but think that this was just the beginning. We had won a battle, but the war to change the industry was just beginning. And with Lily by my side, I was ready to face any challenge that came our way. That night, as I went to sleep, my mind was full of thoughts about the future, about Elite Motors, about the automotive industry, and about Lily. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself excited about what tomorrow might bring. The days following the revelation at Elite Motors were a whirlwind of activity. The press couldn't stop talking about the ethical miracle that had occurred at the dealership. And soon we found ourselves flooded with interview requests and visits from other companies wanting to learn from our model. Lily became the face of this transformation. Her story, from receptionist to visionary leader, captured the public's imagination. Seeing her flourish in this new role filled me with a pride that went beyond the professional. One morning, while reviewing the latest reports in my office, I received an unexpected call from Jack. "Alexander," he said, his voice charged with emotion. "You won't believe this. I just got a call from the National Automobile Dealers Association. They want us to present our ethical business model at their annual conference." I was speechless for a moment. This was an opportunity we hadn't even dreamed of when we started this journey. "That's incredible," I finally managed to say. "When is the conference?" "In 2 weeks," Jack replied. "In New York City. They want you and Lily to be the keynote speakers." I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was our chance to bring our message to a wider audience, to really start changing the industry. But it also meant spending a lot of time alone with Lily, away from the familiarity of Elite Motors. "Count us in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll talk to Lily and we'll start preparing right away." After hanging up with Jack, I headed to Lily's office. I found her working on her computer, completely absorbed in what she was doing. I took a moment to observe her, admiring her dedication and the way her face lit up when she was concentrating. "Lily," I said softly. Not wanting to startle her, she looked up, a smile brightening her face when she saw me. "Alexander, what can I do for you?" I told her about Jack's call and the invitation to the conference. I watched as her eyes widened and a mix of excitement and nervousness crossed her face. "The National Automobile Dealers Association? In New York?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Alexander, this is huge." I nodded, sharing her amazement. "It is, and they want us to be the keynote speakers, you and me, Lily." I saw a flash of something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it excitement, nervousness, or something else? I don't know what to say," she finally said. "It's an incredible opportunity, but am I ready for something like this?" I moved closer to her, putting a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. "Lily, if anyone is prepared for this, it's you. You've been the heart and soul of this transformation. Your story, your vision, is exactly what the industry needs to hear." She looked at me, and for a moment I felt the world stop. There was an intensity in her gaze that made my heart beat faster. "Thank you, Alexander," she said softly. "Your confidence in me, it means a lot." There was a moment of silence between us, charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, I cleared my throat and took a step back, breaking the spell. "Well, we have a lot of work ahead of us," I said, trying to maintain a professional tone. "We need to prepare our presentations, coordinate with the association, make travel arrangements." Lily nodded, also returning to a more professional mode. "Of course, I'll start working on a draft of my presentation right away." The following days were a whirlwind of preparations, between coordinating the trip logistics, preparing our presentations, and ensuring that Elite Motors continued to run smoothly in our absence. We barely had time to breathe. Finally, the day of our trip to New York arrived. As we boarded the plane, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness, not just for the conference that awaited us, but for the prospect of spending so much time alone with Lily. The flight passed mostly in comfortable silence, both of us immersed in our thoughts and final review of our notes. But there were moments, small instances, where our gazes would cross or our hands would accidentally brush, sending sparks of electricity through my body. When we landed in New York, the city greeted us with its characteristic frenetic energy. Our hotel was in the heart of Manhattan, with impressive views of the city skyline. "It's beautiful," Lily said, looking out the window of her to make sure everything was in order. "It is," I replied, "but looking at this city." I was looking at her, the way her eyes shone with excitement. The curve of her smile, she must have felt my gaze because she turned to me. Our eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to disappear around us. "Alexander," she said softly, taking a step towards me. My heart was beating so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Lily, But before I could say anything more, we were interrupted by the sound of my phone. It was Jack, calling to confirm the final details of the conference. The moment was broken. Lily took a step back, a slight blush on her cheeks. "You should answer that," she said, turning her attention back to the window. I nodded, feeling both frustrated and relieved. What was I about to say? And was I really prepared for the consequences? That night, as I lay in my bed, unable to sleep, my thoughts were filled with Lily, her smile, her determination, the way she had transformed not only Elite Motors, but also my life. I realized, with a clarity that both scared and excited me, that I was falling in love with her, and I had no idea what to do about it. The conference would start tomorrow. We would be on stage together, sharing our story with the world. But while the rest of the industry would be focused on our ethical transformation, I would be grappling with a much more personal transformation. How could I focus on changing an industry when my own heart was in the midst of a revolution? With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I finally fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of brown eyes and smiles that lit up entire rooms. The day of the conference dawned bright and clear, as if the New York sky itself wanted to give us its blessing. I woke up early, my nerves buzzing with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. As I got ready, my thoughts kept returning to Lily. How was she handling the pressure? Was she as nervous as I was? And more importantly, how would I handle being so close to her all day, knowing what I now knew about my feelings? We met in the hotel lobby. Lily was wearing a navy blue suit that fit her perfectly, her hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She looked professional, confident, and absolutely beautiful. "Good morning, Alexander," she greeted me with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Ready to change the world?" I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "With you by my side, Lily, I think we could do anything." I saw a slight blush rise to her cheeks, but before I could say anything more, our taxi arrived to take us to the convention center. The place was buzzing with energy when we arrived. Dealership executives from all over the country were mingling, exchanging cards and chatting animatedly. I could feel their curious glances on us as we walked towards the speakers area. Jack met us backstage, his face beaming with excitement. "There are my stars," he exclaimed, giving each of us a hug. "Are you ready to shake this industry to its core?" Lily and I exchanged a look. "I hope so," she said, her voice mixing determination and nervousness. The minutes before our presentation passed in a blur. Before I knew it, we were being announced and walking onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the audience a sea of expectant faces. For a moment, I felt panic overwhelm me. What were we doing here? Who were we to tell an entire industry how to do things? But then I felt Lily's hand brush against mine, a touch so light I might have imagined it. I looked at her and saw in her eyes a mixture of determination and support, and suddenly, everything was all right. I began our presentation, telling the story of how we decided to put Elite Motors to the test. I talked about the prejudices we had uncovered, about how those prejudices were damaging not only customers, but the industry as a whole. And then I passed the microphone to Lily. Watching Lily speak was a revelation. Her passion, her integrity, her vision for a better future. It all shone through every word she said. She spoke about her personal journey, how she went from being a simple receptionist to leading an ethical revolution. She shared the challenges we had faced, the resistance we had overcome. As I listened to her, I realized I was witnessing something extraordinary. Lily wasn't just telling our story. She was inspiring an entire industry to be better. When we finished our presentation, there was a moment of silence, and then, like a wave, the applause began. It grew and grew until the entire auditorium was on its feet, giving us a standing ovation. I looked at Lily, seeing tears of emotion in her eyes. Without thinking, I pulled her into a hug. For a moment, we stood there, embracing under the spotlights, the sound of applause fading into the background. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of interviews, discussion panels, and networking. Executives from everywhere wanted to talk to us, learn more about our approach, explore how they could implement similar changes in their own companies. It was exhausting, exciting, and completely overwhelming. Finally, when the last delegate had left and the organizers began to dismantle the stage, Lily and I found ourselves alone in a quiet corner of the convention center. "We did it," she said softly, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. "You did it," I corrected. "Lily, you were incredible up there. The way you spoke, how you connected with the audience, it was inspiring." She looked at me, her eyes shining with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. "I couldn't have done it without you, Alexander. Your faith in me, your support, it means more than I can express." There was a moment of silence between us, charged with tension and unexplored possibilities. I felt my heart racing, the words I had been holding back for weeks, fighting to come out. "Lily, But before I could say more, we were interrupted by Jack, who came running towards us with a bottle of champagne in hand. "There are my stars!" he exclaimed. "Come on, we have to celebrate." "You've changed the game today." The moment was broken once again. Lily and I exchanged a look, a mixture of frustration and resignation in our eyes. But there was something else there too, a silent promise that this conversation wasn't over. As we followed Jack to the celebration party, I couldn't help but think about what I had almost said. Was I really ready to change our relationship? And what if Lily didn't feel the same way? But as I watched her laugh and chat with the guests, her face lit up with the excitement of the day, I knew I could no longer deny my feelings. I had fallen in love with Lily Mendez, and sooner or later, I would have to tell her. The question was, how would she react when I did? The days following the conference were a whirlwind of activity. We returned to Chicago as heroes, greeted by a wave of positive publicity and renewed interest in Elite Motors. It seemed every dealership in the country wanted to learn from our ethical model. In the midst of all this chaos, I barely had time to be alone with Lily. Our interactions were limited to team meetings and brief encounters in the office hallways. Each time our eyes met, I felt that spark, that unresolved tension that had been growing since New York. One afternoon, almost 2 weeks after our return, I finally had the opportunity I had been waiting for. I found Lily working late in her office, reviewing some reports. "Lily," I said softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, a tired but genuine smile lighting up her face. "Alexander, what are you doing here so late?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, entering her office and closing the door behind me. My heart was pounding, knowing this could be the moment I had been both waiting for and dreading. Lily leaned back in her chair, stretching slightly, just trying to catch up with everything. "Since the conference, it seems there aren't enough hours in the day." I nodded, understanding perfectly. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you." She looked at me, a mixture of curiosity and something else in her eyes. "What is it, Alexander?" I took a deep breath, gathering all my courage. "Lily, these past few months have been extraordinary. Seeing how you've grown, how you've led this transformation, it's made me realize something." I moved closer to her desk, my heart beating so loud I was sure she could hear it. "I've fallen in love with you, Lily." The silence that followed my confession was deafening. I saw a series of emotions cross Lily's face: surprise, confusion, and finally, what seemed to be relief. "Alexander," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper, I have feelings for you too, but hung in the air between us, heavy and full of implications." "But this is complicated," Lily continued. "We're colleagues. We're in the middle of something important here at Elite Motors. What would happen if things don't work out? How would that affect everything we've worked for?" Her words were rational, logical, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. I wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that we would find a way to make it work, but I knew she was right. The situation was complicated. "Lily," I said softly, moving closer to her, "I understand your concerns, and I share them. But I also believe that what we have is special, rare. I don't want to lose the chance to explore this out of fear of what might go wrong." I saw the struggle in her eyes, desire fighting against caution. Finally, she spoke. "Alexander, I need time to think, to process all of this. Can you give me that?" I nodded, feeling a mix of disappointment and hope. "Of course, Lily, all the time you need." I left her office that night with a heavy heart but full of hope. At least now I knew my feelings were reciprocated. The rest, well, time would tell. The following days were torture. Lily and I maintained a facade of normalcy at work, but I could feel the tension between us, the unspoken words that hung in the air every time we were in the same room. Meanwhile, Elite Motors continued to thrive. Our reputation as leaders in business ethics was attracting more customers than ever. Even Derek, who had gone from being a prejudiced salesman to a passionate advocate of our new approach, was breaking sales records. One afternoon, almost a week after my confession, I was in my office reviewing some reports when I received an unexpected call. It was Jack. "Alexander," he said, his voice charged with emotion, "I just received incredible news. The Latin American Automobile Dealers Association wants us to present our model at their annual conference in Buenos Aires next month. My heart skipped a beat. This was an even bigger opportunity than the New York conference, but it also meant more time working closely with Lily, more time dealing with this unresolved tension between us. That's wonderful. Jack, I managed to say. Who will be going? They want you, of course, Jack replied. And Lily, you two are the face of this transformation. Of course they wanted Lily. She was the heart and soul of everything we had accomplished. But the idea of spending several days in Buenos Aires with her, with all this tension between us, it was both exciting and terrifying. All right, I said finally. I'll talk to Lily and we'll start preparing. After hanging up with Jack, I stood looking out the window of my office, lost in my thoughts. How would we handle this? Could we maintain our professional relationship intact while dealing with our personal feelings? My reflections were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. I turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. Alexander, she said softly. Can we talk? My heart raced. This was the moment I had been waiting for and dreading in equal measure. I nodded, indicating for her to come in. Lily closed the door behind her and approached my desk. I could see she was struggling to find the right words. I've been thinking a lot about what you told me, she began. About us. I held my breath, waiting for her next words. Alexander, I have feelings for you too. Strong feelings. But I'm scared. Scared of ruining everything we've built here. Scared of losing your friendship if things don't work out. I took a step towards her, wanting to close the distance between us. Lily, I understand your fears. I share them. But I also believe that what we have is special, rare, and I think it's worth taking the risk. I saw the struggle in her eyes, desire fighting against fear. Finally, she spoke. Maybe you're right, she said softly. Thomas, maybe it is worth taking the risk. My heart leaped. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? But, she continued, and I felt my heart sink. We need to be careful. For the sake of Elite Motors, for the sake of everything we've worked for, we need to take it slow, be discreet. I nodded, understanding completely. Of course, Lily, we'll do this at your pace. She smiled, a smile that lit up the entire room. Thank you, Alexander, for understanding, for being patient. There was a moment of silence between us, charged with unspoken emotions. Then, almost as if she couldn't help herself, Lily stepped forward and kissed me softly on the cheek. Good night, Alexander, she whispered, before turning and leaving the office. I stood there, touching the spot where her lips had brushed my cheek, feeling a mixture of euphoria and anxiety. We had taken a step forward, but the path ahead was still full of uncertainty. And now, with the trip to Buenos Aires on the horizon, things were about to get even more complicated. How would we handle our new and fragile relationship while under the spotlight once again? Only time would tell. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of hope. Lily and I were in this together, and together, I felt we could face anything. The days leading up to the Buenos Aires trip passed in a blur of preparations and anticipation. Lily and I kept our promise of discretion, but there was a new energy between us, an electric current that seemed to vibrate in the air every time we were near each other. Finally, the day of our flight arrived. As we boarded the plane, I couldn't help but remember our trip to New York, how everything had changed since then. This time, when our hands brushed as we settled into our seats, the contact was intentional, full of silent promises. Buenos Aires welcomed us with a bright sky and a vibrant energy that seemed to perfectly match our mood. We checked into our hotel, our rooms conveniently adjacent, and spent the afternoon going over our presentations. The night before the conference, we decided to take a walk around the city. As we strolled through the cobblestone streets of San Telmo, Lily's hand found mine. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" she asked, her voice soft in the night. I smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "A little, but with you by my side, I feel like we can do anything." She returned my smile, her eyes shining in the streetlight. I feel the same way, Alexander. We stopped in a small plaza, the sound of a distant tango floating in the air. Without thinking, I took Lily in my arms and we began to dance, moving slowly to the rhythm of the distant music. "What are we doing?" "Alexander," Lily whispered, her head resting on my shoulder. "Living," I replied simply. "Taking risks, believing in something bigger than ourselves." She lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine, and there, under the starry sky of Buenos Aires, we shared our first real kiss. It was soft, tender, full of promises and possibilities. When we separated, I saw in Lily's eyes the same mixture of excitement and fear that I felt. We were in uncharted territory, but somehow it felt right. The next morning came too soon. We prepared for the conference, exchanging knowing looks and secret smiles as we got ready. The auditorium was packed when we arrived, dealership executives from all over Latin America eagerly awaiting our presentation. I took Lily's hand one last time before we went on stage, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Together," I whispered. "Together," she replied. And so, we began our presentation. We talked about our experience at Elite Motors, about the challenges we had faced and overcome. But more than that, we talked about the future, about how integrity and ethics were not only the right thing to do, but also the smartest thing from a business standpoint. As we spoke, I could feel the energy in the room changing. We saw skeptical faces transform into interested ones, then enthusiastic. We were touching on something fundamental, something that resonated beyond borders and cultures. When we finished, the ovation was deafening. Executives approached us, eager to learn more, to implement similar changes in their own companies. We had started something, a wave of change that promised to transform the entire industry. That night, as we celebrated our success on our hotel's terrace, looking out at the lights of Buenos Aires, I realized we had reached a turning point, not just in our careers, but in our personal lives. "Lily," I said, taking her hands in mine, "these past few months have been the most extraordinary of my life, and not just because of what we've achieved at Elite Motors, but because of what we've discovered between us." She looked at me, her eyes shining with emotion. "Alexander, Let me finish," I said softly. "I know we agreed to take it slow, to be discreet, and I understand why. But after what we've experienced here, after seeing the impact we can have together, I don't want to hide it anymore. I love you, Lily, and I want to face whatever comes, with you by my side." I saw tears forming in her eyes, but her smile was radiant. "Oh, Alexander," she whispered, "I love you too. And you're right, I don't want to hide it anymore either. Let's face this together, like we've done with everything else." We kissed under the stars of Buenos Aires, feeling as if the whole world was opening up before us. We knew there would be challenges ahead. We would have to navigate the complexities of a personal relationship in the professional realm. We would have to face the public scrutiny that would come with our new position as industry leaders. But at that moment, none of that mattered. We had each other, and we had a mission. We were going to change the automotive industry, one dealership at a time, and we would do it together. As we returned to our rooms that night, hand in hand and not caring who might see us, I felt a sense of peace and purpose that I had never experienced before. We had started this journey seeking to change an industry, but in the process, we had changed ourselves. The future was bright, full of possibilities, and we were ready to face it together.